Welcome to On Pause, the podcast where business growth and wellness meet. We will discuss the challenges and solutions of starting and growing a business as a female entrepreneur, especially as a woman of color. Here we understand that self-care and mindset shifting is essential to growing our businesses. I'm your host, Karen Williams, so take a pause with me and enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to a new episode of On Pause. Today we have with us Ashleigh Brown, and Ashleigh is the founder of Claire, and I'm super excited for you all to hear about Claire and what she's working on. So I'm going to turn it over to Ashleigh. Tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing.
So, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
This is amazing.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you. This is an incredible project.
Thank you.
Claire is focused on the reproductive health space. So our tagline is "We Make Moms," and that is our mission. We are embedding integrative health into the fertility process. Okay. So looking at the ways in which our behavioral health, sleep health, nutritional health, sexual health, lifestyle medicine, all feed into the way that our bodies work. So really looking at ourselves more holistically, and understanding that it's not just your reproductive system that is helping you get pregnant. It's a lot of other areas of your life as well, particularly if you have issues, which is where we're starting in the assisted reproductive space. So people going through fertility treatment.
Wow.
So really helping doctors to manage the other ways in which their patients can increase their chances of success in getting pregnant.
Okay, that's fantastic because I've heard so many horror stories about the process. I've not, went through the process, but I've heard a lot of stories about it. So just when I met you the first time to hear it, I was so excited, even though I didn't have any experience, but I was just excited that someone that looks like us was actually taking on something so powerful. So that's amazing. So quickly take me through your journey of how you went from, because I know you started in corporate America because you worked in this space in a sense, right? So kind of tell me how this journey of where you started to how you got to Claire.
I did. Actually, this is the interesting part. And so funny because someone asked me yesterday, what is your background?
Right.
A doctor I was talking to, because she assumed that I was a physician. And I was like, no, I'm the furthest thing from that. My education is in English Lit and Creative Writing. I was a writer, and when the 2008 financial crisis hit, I needed a salary job. I had moved out to California. I had a job at Paramount Pictures that I ended up losing during that time. So we had a family friend that worked in the agency space for gestational carriers and like surrogates and egg donors. And she was like, well, if you need a salary job, you can come and work with us as a case manager. And I was like, I don't even know what that is even about. I had seen in my college newspaper like advertisements for egg donors, but I didn't know what that was.
Right.
We only really knew what sperm donors were back in the early 2000s. Yeah. Like we knew that, but egg donors, it was like, how do you do that? What is that? I ended up falling in love with it. I got hired away by a doctor to run his agency in Santa Monica, California. And at that point, I had access to his lab, to his clinic, all of that. And I was like, oh, I love this. This is amazing. So I ended up moving into the clinical space and became a clinical administrator working in a fertility brand. And I just really loved working with patients and people who were trying to get pregnant. I especially loved always working with the women because, interestingly enough, a lot of our clientele and the patients were same-sex male couples.
Really?
So that was a large portion of who I was working with in the early part of my career. So I treasured being able to work with women because, and I explain this to people, women are coming to it with a different set of issues, right? If two men, are building a family together, they already know what they're going to have to do because it's, biologically impossible for them. Right. But for women, no woman grows up saying, oh, I hope I have to have fertility treatment to have a baby.
Right.
This is something that we think that we will be able to do naturally, and when you're not, it's very devastating. And so just being an empath, loving people, I gravitated towards that part of it. And as I got higher up in my career, there's really a ceiling. Unless you go to medical school, there's really not much more you can do beyond clinical administration and working in clinic. And I knew I had more to offer. So that's really where Claire came from. I knew that I had more to offer the women that were going through this, the doctors that were professionals in this space, and kind of all of the 13 years that I spent in that space, understanding and knowing what everybody needs. I was like, I can tech enable this, and I can find a solution.
And you know, I'm glad you said that, because that was my other question I'm thinking. So you had no tech experience, correct?
None.
And you worked in this space, and you created a tech platform, right? So Claire is a tech platform.
It is.
So tell me about how you went from no tech experience to building this tech platform.
It's been... It's a lot. So I will say the story, and I give credit to a woman named Mandela Schumacher Hodge Dixon, who was the founder of Founder Gym. I went through Founder Gym at the end of 2019. I met her at South by Southwest of 2019 in Austin, and I was talking to her about what I did, and she was like, you should tech enable that. I was like, oh no, I don't code. I don't know how to do any of that. She was like, oh, there's plenty of non-technical founders. I think that you should look into it. So it was on my mind. And on a personal note, I went through a breakup like mid-year. I was kind of at a crossroads, like, what am I doing with my life? I'm going into my late 30s. Like, what do I really want to do? And so I went on a little sabbatical to Paris. I took a little break from work and went to Paris.
Well, if you're going to go on a break, that's where you go.
If you're going to go, right. And while I was there, I spent a lot of time by myself, just walking and eating and doing all the things. And it became very clear to me, which is why I named it Claire, which means clear in French, what I was supposed to do. And so I came back. I quit my job on the plane on the way back.
Wow.
I started just kind of gathering everything. I applied for Founder Gym. That next week I got in. I finished that program at the end of 2019, and I incorporated Claire January 2020.
Wow. So it's been almost 3 years.
Yes, but it has been a difficult journey.
And there you go. Don't jump into my question. So that was my next question. So what have been your challenges during this time? Starting a tech company as a African American woman in this space. Like, tell me about that. What's been your challenges?
I think probably looking back, I can say, I wouldn't have said this going through it, but looking back, I can say my biggest challenge was being overly optimistic going in. Because I thought, I know I got this. Right. I can handle it. I've watched these other people, raise money, start these companies. I can do this too. And it was a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be, especially as a Black woman, which I didn't expect. I kind of felt like that would be my superpower, my secret weapon. Yeah. Which to some extent I still feel that's true. I think that Black women are we're the most resourceful and resilient. Right. And so I think those are the things that you have to be if you're going into this. So I think we are uniquely qualified, but I wasn't ready for the ways in which other people would experience me. Yeah. And the biases that they would have, and the just kind of lowered expectations and just not really seeing. It's interesting when you're sitting and talking to somebody about your company and telling them, and they're hearing something completely different because they're looking at you. Right. And I went through that on a number of occasions, just, even just talking to investors, not even to necessarily get them to invest, but just to engage them around my company. They would hear something completely different. And so it would be like this process of having to really educate them on what the company was. Yeah. Because they had just a preconceived notion that they couldn't let go of. Right.
And so that's another thing I was thinking is you're going into rooms with investors, and 9 times out of 10, I'm sure, or 10 out of 10, they're white men that you're going in to pitch about a fertility company or how to help people become moms. So what has been that experience like, going in those rooms, preparing for those conversations that you're going to have to explain to the investors?
Ooh, child. Let me see. So this always pops out. I love to tell this story just because I feel like it's symbolic of the whole journey. It was for a competition. So I pitched at the Venture Atlanta conference last year. And I probably shouldn't say much more than that. But I pitched to this panel of investors to get into the finals for that. And I did make it into the finals, the top 8. But one of the investors asked me, so if you are getting all the people pregnant, then why would doctors want you to do that? Because then they won't have any more clients after that. And I was like, well, you know, more people have babies. Like, it's an ongoing process. There's not just a set population of people who can have a baby and then they get pregnant and then we're done as a human race. That's not how it works. And it was just crazy to me that question even came up, because it's like, you really aren't even thinking through this from a biological standpoint. But that kind of highlighted to me, like, okay, you don't need to engage everybody. And I think that was also my mistake in the beginning, was anybody who wanted to, who I felt like I had access to, I wanted to talk to them about it. But I realized that's often waste your time and energy, and it burns you out. So I've learned to, at this point, and at this, you know, having been in the game for a while now, make sure that I'm only talking to people that I know are going to receive it. Yeah. Even if they have objections or insights or feedback or whatever, that's fine. But people who don't get it at all, it's not worth the time, because it ends up sucking you dry, you know, trying to get people to where you are and understanding. So and there are plenty of people out there who do have a good understanding of this. I now meet a lot of investors who will say, oh, my sister went through, or me and my wife went through this. Or, you know, more women investors now. I try to definitely deal with more women investors, more Black investors. But that it takes some time to get to that place. So tell me about, like, how do you deal with that rejection, though, when you go in the room and you know you killed it, right? You know you did your best. And for me, like the first time I told you, like when I heard it, I was like, oh my God, that's fantastic. I was so excited. Like, well, how do I, you know, I was super excited. So for someone not to get it kind of puzzles me. And so, like, how do you deal with that rejection, I guess? I didn't deal with it very well in the early times. I deal with it much better. It rolls off my back now. But I think I really had to build up that shell of just being like, you know, I really got to the point where it was like, if they don't get it, it's not for them. But in the early days, you know, it's like Erykah Badu, you know, you're sensitive about your stuff. Like, it's, you know, it's your baby. And so when people don't understand it, you're like, why? And you want to make them. But again, that actually, it robs you of energy and the resources that you need. So I have learned to just kind of more quickly understand if people are going to get it or not, and move on if they're not. But I think in those early times, I really had to, I would say, surround myself with a community, too, of support. Other founders, underrepresented founders, underestimated founders, however you want to say it. And just kind of sharing stories and understanding what we were all going through, and that we're all kind of going through it. That community definitely did help. So when you're getting prepared, how do you prepare for pitches? I know you've won some pitches, right? I won, yes. Yeah, good. 2, yes. See? Yeah, don't miss them now. So how do you prepare yourself for pitches? One, going into rooms with investors that you don't know, that necessarily don't look like you. So what are you doing to prepare yourself? So this is interesting. There was a time when I first started out, and people would say to me, really, really well-seasoned people would say to me, at some point, you won't need to memorize a pitch, and you'll just, you know, it's better if you're just talking to people, and you don't sound like you memorized something or you're reading something. And I was like, that's impossible. I could never do that. I would memorize every syllable. But I did realize that over time, that was more detrimental, because I would be thinking, oh my God, I forgot to say this. Yeah. So now I really just kind of familiarize myself with the material. I make sure my deck is tight. And then I do just speak about it. I just go slide by slide, let the deck lead me. I don't memorize, I don't write something down and memorize it, because it stumps you. Okay. So you feel more comfortable just kind of just speaking more confident. Your truth. Yeah. But it took me some time to get to that place. Okay. So I understand when people in the early days are like, oh no, I can't just talk off the top of my head. That'd drive me crazy. I'd be too afraid. I'm like, you will one day. You will get to that point where you know your company so well. Right, exactly. And you can prepare a deck and just let the deck lead you through it.
So, what has been your biggest takeaways from the last almost 3 years? What do you think you've learned the most from starting a tech company as one with no tech experience? So, what do you think has been your biggest takeaway?
Anybody who asks me this, particularly Black women, I say your team is everything. You have to find the right team. It took me a while to do that.
Okay.
And really getting the right people to ride with you, who are going to really pitch in, who don't need marching orders. They're going to, anticipate stuff and start putting stuff into motion themselves.
Right, yes.
You have to have those people. So I would say don't do it until you have a good partner in some sense. It doesn't have to be a co-founder, but somebody who has your back. And that you can kind of workshop stuff with. I just finished a tech accelerator, and we were so excited about that. We were a small cohort, only 5 companies, but I was one of 2 solo founders there. But it was so good seeing the ones who had co-founders. They have so much bandwidth, especially when they have 3 co-founders. One can be doing an application, one's doing a pitch, one's doing a meeting. So just having people on your team is important. Yeah,
I definitely agree. You definitely want people that add value, right? And don't wait for an issue to come up. You need people that's proactive versus reactive. Right. I definitely can agree.
Right.
Okay, so with all of this, right, you're building a company, you quit your job, and so you're doing this full time, right? How do you take care of Ashleigh? Like, how are you making sure that you're taking care of your self-care, your mental? Like, we see what's going on, right, in social media, just even locally in Nashville with mental health and people, even the people that you think are like the most successful and they look on the outside very happy, like, are still struggling and we don't even know it. So, like, how are you taking care of yourself?
Definitely better than last year. I'm so intentional now, and I encourage people who are kind of starting out to make sure that you don't get to a place of burnout, because if you do, it's really hard to get back from that. And that happened to me last year. Last August, I hit a wall because I had literally worked the entire year. I didn't have one day off. Even when I moved here to Nashville from the Bay Area, my dad drove. I plugged in my computer and I worked the whole ride here. So I hadn't taken one day off. I hadn't done anything for myself. My life had become the company.
Yes.
And the burnout was so real, it was scary. So I avoid that at all costs. Now I make sure that I have time to work out. That's just plugging into myself. And it's really good for my mental health.
Yeah.
Spend time with friends. I saw you at the 3686 parties. Make sure that I'm not just doing stuff because it's work related, but also going to social things and hanging out with amazing people. That feeds you.
Yeah.
So I've learned the importance of that. Even, during the holidays, I know a lot of founders, we're all still working. But, if people are having Christmas parties and gets-togethers, you need to go carry yourself over there and, be around people. It's so important to have that community and time that's not about your company.
Right, right. I definitely think so. I agree. I would say sometimes we get so caught up in it. I know I feel guilty sometimes if I am away too long from my computer. I can remember taking my kids on vacation. I was like, okay, I just need 4 hours in the morning to work and then we can do other stuff. But I want to get to the point where I am 100% present in a vacation. And for me, that's success. You know how everybody values success differently?
That's
for
luxury.
me, it's complete control of my time.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. So I have a question for you.
Okay.
I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be something you're going to pick.
Uh-oh.
But while I'm doing that, tell me what's next. So what are you working on? I know you just finished your cohort. What are you working on, and what's going on next?
So we're actually launching in March.
Okay.
This has been a labor of love. I brought on a really great product person and data person during the cohort.
Yes.
So we're working on our data architecture right now, but I'm so excited about launching.
Yes.
And being out there, we decided we're a B2B company, but we're going to market as a direct-to-consumer. So Q2 is really focused on getting users onto our platform.
Okay.
And right now I'm applying for an NIH grant too. So hopefully, fingers crossed, prayer hands.
You want to tell us what that means?
Yes, so
NIH?
the National Institute of Health,
Oh, okay.
they have a small, I did not know this, I learned it through my accelerator.
Come on.
They have a small business grant for $275,000.
Okay.
To develop R&D around, health tech, if you have, when you're in health tech. So we have always wanted to develop a genomics pipeline to start looking at how our genetic makeup also contributes to those integrative health measures.
Right.
So, and we want to look at different demographics, like, really understand why do Black women have a predisposition to fibroids? What, Asian women sometimes tend to develop reproductive challenges or infertility early, or why? So those are things we're interested in learning, and genomics can open that up for us.
Wow, that's
so
fantastic.
If we get this grant,
when you get this grant, hello,
yes,
when?
I'm very excited. It's due on January 5th, so I've been working on that now. But I'm hoping that that's next.
Yes,
so
that's next.
As we launch, that'll be going on in the background.
I'm excited. That's next. So when it happens, you text me. Okay.
I will. Okay, this is fun. Okay, come on, card.
Good. Okay, so pick any card. I don't know what it's gonna be. Okay, read it to yourself. See if it's something you're comfortable with.
Oh, okay.
Okay, what is it? She says deep.
What are you doing to become the person you want to be?
Right.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely something I'm working towards every day. Working hard is always the big thing, but I think too, like I was just saying, knowing when to select the times when you work hard.
Yes.
And being more respectful of the fact that you have a whole life that you have to live. I have other goals. I have personal goals that I want to achieve. I want to have a family of my own. That's something that I have not paid very much attention to as I've been building this company, and it's getting late in life for me. So that is something I think that I am actively in 2023 trying to pay more attention to.
Awesome. Well, Ashleigh, thank you so much for being a guest on Pause. I really appreciate you coming. I'm so super proud of you. I've said this like 3 or 4 times, but I just remember meeting you for the first time. It was probably 2 years ago, and we talking about what you were doing. And I'm super proud of you. And I know this, things are going to be opening up because it just solves such a big problem. And I always wonder, like, how are people not getting it? But I know nothing but great things are coming. So again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I love this podcast.
Thank
I'm very excited to be on it.
Well, thank you guys for joining us today. We'll talk to you on the next one. Bye. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Please make sure to check the show notes to learn more about connecting with our guests. Also, if you haven't done so already, join our mailing list to be alerted of new episodes, upcoming events, and more at KarenDWilliams.com.